There's been a dramatic and significant change in American foreign policy in the Middle East. The Trump administration says it will no longer class Israeli settlements in the West Bank as a violation of international law.
Well, Israeli leaders have welcomed that decision. Palestinians, however, as well as some other nations, are warning it undermines the chances of a peace deal. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says former administrations gave mixed messages on settlements.
The Trump administration is reversing the Obama administration's approach towards Israeli settlements. U.S. public statements on settlement activities in the West Bank have been inconsistent over decades. The establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not, per se, inconsistent with international law.
אזרחי ישראל, זהו יום היסטורי ועוד הישג עצום למדיניות שלנו.
Citizens of Israel, this is an historic day and another great achievement of our policy. After President Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and recognized our sovereignty over the Golan Heights, now the American administration put an end to the lie that settlements are illegal. I thank President Trump and I thank Secretary of State Pompeo.
The statements of Secretary Pompeo constitute a total departure of the U.S. administration, or should I say the Trump administration, from international law, the rule of law, solving conflicts by peaceful means. They are replacing international law with the law of the jungle.
So how did we get here? Well, as Mr. Netanyahu said, the change in attitude by the US administration towards Israel first came in 2017 when it was announced that the American embassy was moving to Jerusalem, recognising the city as the Israeli capital, despite its disputed status under international law.
In March, earlier this year, the US government recognised Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, this territory captured from Syria by Israel during the Six-Day War in 1967.
Now, the Trump administration said that the Israeli settlements in the West Bank do not violate international law.
Well, that despite opinions by the United Nations General Assembly, the United Nations Security Council and the International Court of Justice, the settlements do violate the Fourth Geneva Convention, which states that an occupying force, quote, shall not deport or transfer parts of its own civilian population into the territory it occupies.
Well, Israel has always seen the fate of the settlements as a subject for negotiations for a peaceful two-state solution. The settlements are, however, seen as a big hindrance to that very solution. Some 700,000 Israeli settlers live in the West Bank and annexed East Jerusalem areas, which are both claimed by the Palestinians for their state.
Let's turn again to our Middle East correspondent, Mark Stone, who's on the West Bank. Mark, practically, what difference, if any, will this have?
Well, psychologically, it has a huge difference. I think on both sides of the argument, Israeli Jews took a big breath inward as they heard this news, because although it fits with the trajectory of what Donald Trump's administration has said, the fact that it has actually happened now is a big moment. And I think equally for the Palestinians on the other side, another big intake of breath and a depressing moment for them, as they believe this is another difficult moment in the quest for a two-state solution for those that believe that is still a viable option. We're in the settlement of Mitzpe Jericho. It means in Hebrew overlooking Jericho, and it literally does. Look at the view down there. That is the Palestinian town of Jericho, one of the lowest points on earth, one of the oldest inhabited cities on earth, and beyond it is Jordan. Now, the West Bank, as you outlined a moment ago, was once a part of Jordan. It was taken by Israel in the Six-Day War in 1967 and has been part of what Israel considers to be its territory ever since, which is why Israeli Jews believe it is both their historic and legal right to be able to live in settlements like this. So let's get a bit more on this, discuss it with Uri Pilichescu. Thank you for talking to us. You're a settler. You're originally from the US, from New Jersey.
Originally from New Jersey, and now I live here.
Tell me what you think of the news out of the United States yesterday.
I think it's great. I think it's anytime that we recognize truth and establish facts on the ground that have been historic truths for ages, I think that's a great thing. So I'm grateful to the Trump administration and to Secretary Pompeo and everybody else that's involved in the decision and making the decision last night.
Historic truths for ages. For how long?
We're talking 3,000 years. Our ancestors were on this land, thousands and thousands of years ago, starting with Abraham and all the way until now. So we're going back literally millennia.
How do you think that this will help the peace process?
I think the peace process has to be built on truth. So I think that every time we establish truth as a fact, I think that helps the peace process and moves us forward and gets us away from distractions.
Now, Sarah Barakat, who is a influential Palestinian MP, in fact, MP for Jericho, he said today, I'll read it to you, Israeli settlements steal Palestinian land, seize and exploit Palestinian natural resources, and divide, displace and restrict the movement of the people of Palestine. In sum, Israel's colonial settlement enterprise perpetuates the negation of Palestinian right to self-determination. Why is he wrong?
He's wrong because this is, historically, it's our land. This mountain that we're standing on now has never been inhabited by anybody. So it wasn't taken from anybody. There's no archaeological evidence here of humans ever being here. The only people that were ever here were people lost on their way to Jericho. So we have a Palestinian city over there and a Jewish settlement over here, and no land has been taken, and nobody's prevented from driving anywhere they want. I don't understand what he's talking about.
What are the prospects for peace, then? What are the prospects for a two-state solution? Can you share the land?
I think we could definitely share the land, 100%. We've shared it for ages. There's no reason why we can't continue to do that. I think when people like Mr. Erekat finally get off their pulpit and stop talking about being a victim and start talking about moving forward and coming up with productive ways of living peacefully, then we'll start to live peacefully with each other.
You don't think that the idea that of an apartheid state of Palestine, where they are behind a wall, literally unable to have freedom of movement, there's a problem there, right?
I think there is an apartheid state of Palestine, but I think it's the Palestinian Authority under Mr. Erekat's leadership that's doing that to his own people. I think you should go and interview Palestinians and ask them about their freedoms of speech under their own government and see where you go.
Well, funnily enough, we'll be doing just that. We're going to go down to Jericho and talk to them a little bit later on. As you can see here, they are still building this settlement. It's been here since the 1970s. Population 3,000. The number of settlements, despite the fact that the international community, with now the exception of the United States, says they are illegal, they are still being built across the West Bank.
Mark.